Number one, thank you, and thank you for coming. I'd like to introduce myself and talk a little bit about the program tonight. My name is Dr. Matthew Robinson. I'm a professor of sport management at the University of Delaware in the United States. I became familiar with Maldives and Maldives sport through a program that I lead is the International Coaching Enrichment Certificate Program. It's a program that's funded through the International Olympic Committee's Olympic Solidarity Fund. And I've been doing that program for 15 years, and during those 15 years, we've had, I believe, 5 coaches from Maldives participate in the program. Nahid in the back is one of our graduates from the program. We've had coaches from swimming, track and field, and table tennis participate in the program. The idea of why we're here, and I'll introduce my colleague Steve Roush here in a second. He'll talk a little bit about themselves. Is that again the idea of in speaking with the leadership of the ministry and the Olympic Committee about having a long-term vision for Maldives sports and looking strategically where there's opportunities to grow. And one of the important parts of that process is trying to bring together those that are considered stakeholders, that are invested in the process, that are responsible for the process, and definitely looking at the national sport associations. That's definitely one of the roles that you fulfill. So we really appreciate you taking the time on a Friday to be with us. And I'll say this, that we're here more to listen than to speak. I think one of the things that the experiences that prepare me in doing these kinds of programs, and the same with Steve, is from that ICCP program, I have interacted with 400 coaches from 120 different countries, and I believe 24 different sports. And the one thing I've learned is that there's no one way, just one way of doing things. That each country is unique, each sport is unique. There's challenges, there are opportunities, there's culture that's there. And the idea that we're coming and saying, well, this is the way we do it in America, and now you're going to do it that way in Maldives is short-sighted on our part, ineffective, it will be a waste of time. And so for part of us, in trying to work more forward of looking at possible opportunities, solutions, suggestions, is to learn more and to listen more. And again, I think, like I always say, we want to do with, not to. And so that is the critical part when we were putting together the program was we need to listen to those that are involved in that process. Now, the other areas that I bring in my experiences that I think are making me a capable listener is, number one, in the United States, sport is embedded in our educational systems. That it starts in primary and secondary schools, that we have competitions across schools, within regions. We have regional championships as far as sports and the full array of sports. So I was a product of a high school sport athletic tradition. I coached high school sports and actually have lectured, have written a book chapter, and talked about the governance of what we call interscholastic sport. So very much understand it and have very much lived it. The second thing is that we have universities, and it's the same thing. We have schools embedded in our universities. And at the highest levels, it's big business. That we have institutions that are generating over $200 and $300 million in revenue off of competitive athletics within the realm of education. And that, again, it's very high level, and it's where many of our elite athletes across multiple Olympic programs, but also our basketball and our American football athletes all come from that system. And it's this marriage of education and sport, and trying to use sport as a means to promote education. But then on the other hand, it creates incredible community spirit within the school, and it creates positive rivalries, that you have rivalries against other schools. And it's very good competition. But boy, it's a challenge to balance competitive athletics while still trying to promote the importance of education in that area. Okay. The other areas, it's something that I did was in the state of Delaware. We're a very small state in the United States. I think we are the smallest state. And we created an entity several years ago, and it's in the United States. Most major cities in the United States have what are called sports commissions. And the idea behind a sports commission is they're an entity that sits between the sport industry and the tourism and hospitality industry. And I had a chance to stay at one of your resorts the first night, and you guys have the resort industry down, it looks like, in terms of the amazing, opportunities to come and vacation and holiday, in your beautiful country. But the idea that in America, that sport is viewed as a vehicle to promote visitors and tourism. So we created an entity, the Sports Commission in Delaware, is we sit between the tourism and the sports sides, and we facilitate the communication. And we identify events that we're going to go after to host, to bring in. Number one, it's great competition. It gives our athletes, a home field advantage, the advantage to compete in front of their, on their home land. But the other part of it is it generates a lot of business. And business not only for the tournament, but people saying, hey, I really enjoyed myself. Maybe I'll come back, at a later time. And so it's very much viewed as economic. And the reason we sit in the middle is it used to be the case before we had in Delaware that, the hotels were already booked solid, with another event. And then they'd run a sporting event on that same weekend. And then the sport people would say, we have no rooms for our people to stay in. And it was like, well, did you ever think about finding out if the hotels had openings before you scheduled the date of your event? And then the next weekend, the hotels were saying, we would love to have you because we have nothing going on that weekend. So we sat in the middle and facilitated and negotiated and collaborated that I remember the first meeting, it was like there was a middle line. Sport guys over here, tourism people over there, and they didn't want to talk. And we got them talking. And now some of them are, and I still sit on the board, some of them have become very good friends. Why? They both benefit from that relationship. So again, when I'm sitting and listening, I'm referring to those experiences, trying to understand it, looking at other countries similar to Maldives that I've seen through my international experiences, and looking for, hey, could this work? And again, being cognizant of the country, the sports that have strong traditions, your cultural aspects, all those things that come into play, and trying to find good solutions. But at the end of the day, our solutions are going to be coming from the input of the stakeholders that include you. All right? So I want to turn things over to Steve Roush, my colleague. He teaches a course here at the University of Delaware, but he has an incredible past history. I met Steve when he was the United States Olympic Committee as a sport director when we started the ICCP, but I'll let Steve talk a little bit about his experiences and what he's bringing to the program tonight.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This project that we're working on is only going to be successful if we have the input of all the key stakeholders. And so you being here tonight helps us to be able to deliver a product to the sport minister that is meaningful, impactful, and covers all the various areas that need to be covered when looking at developing a stronger sport program within the Maldives. My background, as Matt said, I was a swimmer, and I became a coach, and then I became an administrator, and then ultimately was asked to head up and become the chief of sport at the U.S. Olympic Committee. And from there, I decided I just wanted to work for myself, and so I've been a consultant for international sports since 2009. I work with varying sizes and competitive, excellent countries, from very tiny ones like Hong Kong, Singapore, to Russia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Japan, and all of them, the one thing that I learned, and I think both Matt and I come from this angle, that projects like this, our first priority is to learn about the culture, the environment, the history, so as to not repeat any mistakes, but to know what we're dealing with and not just simply roll in with a one-size-fits-all remedy, because one size doesn't fit all. And it has to be the Maldives model that gets developed, because that's what you need here. And the only way we're able to do that is to listen, to learn, and then to apply concepts, ideas that we know have worked in other parts of the world, and try and create solutions for the challenges that you face here in the Maldives. So that's what tonight is really about, for us to do a lot of listening, to open up and ask questions and kind of peel it out of you. Hopefully you're here to talk, and we're here to listen, and that's going to be the collaboration that will take place, we hope starts tonight. But that collaboration and communication is some of the keys to success in a sports system. You can't live in silos, and that includes not just the Ministry of Sport, but the Minister of Education and the Minister of Health. All of those are key elements to what sport can do for a country, and they need to be included in whatever system you do develop. So in that spirit of collaboration, I hope that you're here and willing to share your thoughts and give us a good lesson in Maldivian National Sport Association. So I'll turn it back over to Matt, and we'll get things rolling here tonight.
So the first thing I was going to ask, and may mean some effort on your part. And by the way, you guys are going to be working a little bit tonight. We're not doing all the talk. Remember, we're using the ears more so. But at your tables, and I'm not sure who's who, and I see some people that are wearing similar attire. But at your tables, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables. Mike, I'd like it to be that at a table that there's no two people from the same sport at that table. So how many people are multiple people with a sports federation? Here we go. Okay, we got somebody who's already volunteering to make a move there. So you guys got the same uniform on, so I can figure you out, man. I'm on to you. I'm on to these two guys over here. So let's have it that if no two people from the same sport are sitting at the same table. Everybody good? Everybody good? All right. So now, real quick, let's just go around the room, and if we could start and just go, we'll start over here. Just a quick stand up. If you could give us your name and your sport association. And number one, we're checking to make sure we got no cheaters here. But the other part is just so we know who we're dealing with, what people are representing what area. So, and do we have the microphones for the tables? I think there's a microphone right there. So if we start there, so I think the microphone will just make its way over. So again, just quickly your name and then your sport.
And the reason to talk in the mics is that this is being recorded. And the only way that they can hear off those cameras is that if you're talking into the microphone. So it isn't just. I know you have a coach's voice and everything else, but it's really so that the quality of the audio on the recordings are sufficient to be heard. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Very good evening to you all. I'm Ahmad from Maldives Paralympic Committee. We do conduct sports program for children and persons with disabilities nationally and internationally. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ahmad Hussain. I'm from Cricket Board of Maldives, Vice President.
Good evening. I'm Ivo. I'm from Portugal. I'm the head coach for Maldives Tennis Association.
Good evening. I'm Amnet from Back Maldives and
Sport?
Back Maldives. Back Association.
Okay, gotcha.
Hello, my name is Shiuri. I'm from Table Tennis Association of Maldives. I'm the Vice President.
Hi, I'm Sharif. I'm from Sumi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ahmed from Tennis Association of Maldives. I'm the administrator.
Imad from Maldives Cricket Development Manager.
Hi, my name is Arzan. I'm from the Surfing Association of Maldives. I'm the YDP course coordinator for the association.
Good evening. I'm Ali. I'm Bike Maldives Vice President.
Good evening. I'm Hussein Nizam, Maldives Bodyboarding Association President.
Hi, good evening. I'm Shahid Amin from the Maldives Surfing Association.
Hello, I'm Hussein Raushan, General Secretary of Kerala Association of Maldives.
Good evening. I'm Ahmad Mujtaba, Handball Maldives, Handball.
Good evening. My name is Adam. I'm from Maldives Basketball Association.
Good evening. I'm Hussein from Maldives Basketball Association.
Good evening. I'm Ibrahim from Bodyweight Association of Maldives.
Good evening. I'm Firuzar from Maldives Taekwondo.
I'm Hassan from Maldives Bodyboarding Association.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. I'm Hassan from Shooting Association of Maldives.
Good evening. I'm Saif from Racing Association of the Maldives.
Good evening. I'm Abdul Salim from Handball Maldives, Vice President.
Good evening. I'm Fazna from Netball Association of Maldives.
Mahid from Maldives Pole Billiard Association.
Good evening, Colonel Shaman from Shooting Association of Maldives.
Good evening. I am Zuhair from Maldives Taekwondo.
Hi, good evening. I am Ibrahim from the Kerala Association of Maldives.
So to start things off, to get you talking a little bit and maybe give you getting a conversation of collaboration going. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll get the question going here, and then I'll show it to you later. But I'm going to share a diagram with you a little later that there are variables. We'll share some things with you. I have a couple slides we're going to share with you. Some of you may have seen them before, but using it kind of as a framework, the framework conversations. But I'm going to share with you in a little bit the full framework, but one of the aspects that are associated with elite sport success, for a country, are training facilities. So that we have multiple sports, different sports all sitting at the table. So to get the conversation going is if you had the opportunity, or the opportunity was created to build a national multi-sport high-performance training center, what would it need? Now, you'd be looking at it from your sports perspective, and what would the elements of that facility be? Now, I'm not saying we're here to promise that a facility like that's going to be built, but getting you thinking about, because again, each sport, as we said, each country is unique, each sport is unique in terms of, and I'm not going to give any hints or anything, but as you sit at the table, if you have maybe a secretary, and we're going to come to each table and say, okay, what do you guys need? And some of the things are going to be common. Other things, it's going to be, yep, we've got 4 of those things that they've said, but this is one they didn't say. And we'll take a look at that. But it's an understanding that we're different, but we also have some similar needs. So we're going to give you 7 minutes and see if you can come up with a list of things that you would say that, hey, this is what is necessary if we're going to build this national training center that will be able to service all the sports that we have here. Okay? So let's start that conversation, and then we'll bring it back and talk as a group. Okay? And we go.
We got 3 minutes to go. About 3 minutes to go.
All right. We're going to move around to each of the tables, and so select one from each table that's going to report out what you guys talked about, and we'll take minutes, and we'll start with this table over here. Yeah. Short and sweet. It doesn't have to be a long explanation. So.
Yeah, we have in our table we have cricket, tennis, and bike. Am I right? Bike and disability sports. So we discuss about the facility that we need to have it for the high performance. It is gym, pool, track, etc. Apart from that, proper training facilities and accessibility and inclusion in the system. And specific qualified trainers like for dietary and coaching and other aspects of sports for high performance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
We didn't discuss about the specific requirement for that. There must be a gym with the facilities shall be there. No, generally.
All right. Over at this table, who's the lucky Mike? So more of a therapy pool. You'd be looking at it more of a competition pool. Okay.
Maybe the swimming association does not have it. Hopefully we are going to have it. Not, then I think we shall have a minimum 50 meters pool.
We have a swim representative?
Yeah.
Where is he? 50 meters, not bad?
Okay.
So here at our table we have bike and cricket, surfing, table tennis, and tennis, swimming. So I'm from surfing. So we discussed about having a gym facility for all inclusive, which is has to be sufficient enough to accommodate all of the sports, and a recovery and rehabilitation center for the athletes, services of a dietitian, a physiotherapist, and etc. To support the athletes of that nature, and medical facilities as well as seminar rooms and classrooms to conduct theory lessons.
Okay. Did you get all those? Okay.
Good evening. We have a basketball, handball, carom, surfing, and volleyball. Thank you. We discussed about this high performance center. Should be the athlete monitoring system. Athlete monitoring system.
Athlete monitoring system and high performance center.
Recovery facilities and fitness center and nutrition. Yeah. Then mental health center and anti-doping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who's feeling vocal? There we go.
Yes, in our group we have handball, racing, shooting, bodyboarding, taekwondo, bodybuilding, and basket. We discussed some of the points already mentioned from other groups, like gym is very important in HPC, like strengthening and functional gym, sports medicine and rehabilitation for recovery, and physiotherapy department should be included. Equipments, that is like for all the sports, it is important, and classrooms or the facilities with for training purposes, and nutrition center I think is very important with nutritionists for all the sports even. Research and development section should be there, and sports psychology service I think is very important. Anything missing? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, the stable back here.
Thank you. We have netball, pole billiard, shooting, taekwondo, and carom. Others have mentioned, we also have mentioned the same points, gym for all sports, recovery, and training classroom and workshops for health check with latest technologies, sports medical center. And also one point we want to highlight is human factor for athletes. Human factor. Human factor in the sense means once the psychological part, the threats and everything they face during the games, those things like that.
Great, thank you. So I'm hearing on a lot on facilities shortage, that there is a need and a desire to upgrade and improve. Quick question, just a show of hands. Do you feel that one site, a facility that we were talking about, one site will be sufficient, or would regional type of hubs, regional high performance centers be a better fit so that you could have it near athletes, so a north, a south, a west type of setup where these regional hubs are available and the athletes don't have to travel a long distance to be able to access those facilities. So just a show of hands, who would support regional hubs? And who would rather it just be centralized? Just one, okay. And, okay, so it's kind of split between sports. I'm kind of curious, for those that just want one, what's your sport? You can just, basketball? Tennis? And is that largely because they'll come and you'll be able to get them all into one versus being able to reach them, or is it just that you're stretched from a staffing standpoint to be able to do it at more than one site? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Operational, it would be political, check the box. Operational, disaster. So, okay. And the other thing that I heard loud and clear was the concept of having these performance services as part of your training facility. So when I say performance services, that's the sports medicine, the sports science, the nutrition, the psychology. That's missing now. You feel as though there isn't a strong support service or performance services system in place. Qualified trainers. And let me just be clear. So trainers being coaches. Okay. The reason I say that, some parts of the world, a trainer is actually a physio. And so I want to make sure we're using the right terminology on what you need qualified. Okay. All right. You want to do a summary there?
Yeah, so can I ask a couple questions? And again, I think this is getting to a point of collaboration and so forth. But I kind of joked here at the beginning there, but I have Jim. I have Jim. Now, how big is that gym? How big does it need to be if we're multi-sport? One basketball court size?
When we call gym, we refer to it as a fitness center.
Okay.
Then weights and stuff.
So what would you call it that where the basketball team would practice or compete? Arena?
Court.
A court. Okay. So how many courts do we need?
In terms of basketball, minimum it should be 3 indoor courts. Yeah.
Okay, 3 indoor basketball courts. And I'm pretty sure basketball is the only sport that plays indoor on a hard surface. I'm joking.
Netball and volleyball share with us.
I got netball, volleyball. Anyone else need a hard surface indoors? Got tennis? Shooting? Okay, all right, shoot. Where's handball? And handball, the surface is bigger than the basketball court, if I remember correct. Okay, so the 3 basketball courts equal 3 handball courts? They do? Okay, all right. And I guess I'll ask, what surface should it be? Wood? Is everybody good with wood? No? Okay. So again, kind of interesting when we start looking at, okay, we have our needs, but then if we're trying to collaborate, well, wait a minute, do we have maybe one surface that's multi-purpose? Would a multi-purpose surface do for you, or do you need a specific surface? You have indoor courts, okay. All right. But is team handball okay on wood?
We have specific flooring for handball.
Okay. So is that a temporary surface?
Yeah, it can be replaced. If it is wood also, we can place that one.
Okay. All right.
Place it over the wood.
Yes.
Okay. So again, I think the idea here is a little bit of like, okay, we have our needs, but where's their collaborative needs? Where can we share? A lot of times we hear about, well, the resources, and if there's limited resources, that then means being economical and figuring out, the ideas of, hey, is there opportunities to share? And if it's sharing, then we have to have our needs all met. Okay? So one is, again, it was interesting that we had a lot of the same things come up, but still there's some uniqueness associated with our sports that are associated with our collaboration that keeps us separate, but still the idea of coming together. Now, I had a slide up, and hold this one. That the second assignment I wanted you to do was, this is a framework that Steve and I both use often. Let me get rid of my national. Okay. This is a framework that I know I came across easily over like about 12 years ago, and I use often in helping people evaluate their organizations and develop strategic initiatives and moving forward. But the idea behind it, it's the term SPLIT stands for Sports Policies Leading to International Sports Success. And what it is, it's a model that has inputs to things that are put in, throughputs to things that we do with what we're put in, and then we have outputs is what our goals are. And so one thing is, we could do an entire exercise that you could sit there with your federation and evaluate where you are across these different variables. And just to do a brief explanation of it is, the inputs are we need financial resources. The second part is we need a sound organizational structure of governance, policies, procedures, staffing of how we do things. The third is foundation and participation. Our athletes, where do we get them from? Who are they? How aggressive are we in recruiting them? Are we a sport that the kids naturally come to us because it's the most popular sport? Or is it a sport that doesn't have a great deal of awareness that maybe we have to go out and recruit our athletes into our sport? And what's the characteristics of an elite athlete in your sport? And foundation and participation is pretty critical. Now we have these things, then we put them into this process, and I'll work my way up. At first we talked about our training facilities. Okay? That's something that's needed, associated with trying to achieve success. Then we have coach provision development. There's an opportunity for coaches to be compensated, and is there resources available and avenues available to develop our coaches that they can move towards becoming experts in coaching? And we'll talk in a minute. I'm going to jump across to go to this pillar over here, because then the idea that do you have a clear plan on how you identify your athletes that are potentially elite? What does an elite swimmer look like? And that's a part of talent identification. But also then there's the talent development. Is there a clear, logical progression plan that athletes are moving towards to achieve their full potential? And are there coaches that know their appropriate roles in that developmental plan? And that helps athletes achieve their true potential. And this can be both international and national competitions. How often are you competing? I'm going to bust on America for a little bit. We love to play and not practice. And I see my tennis guy just kind of smiling there. We have kids that will be playing 7 matches in a week and train one day. And shouldn't it be the other way around? Training 5 days and playing one day? And we do that in all of our sports. And so that's the one thing I always go to with a lot of our sports is, hey, take a look at your training and competition ratios. We're out of whack. We're backwards than a lot of other people. Scientific research, you guys emphasize. You guys run the whole cardio area, physio area, sports nutrition, sports psychologist, exercise, kinesiology. You wanted all of that. Yeah, sports science. That enhances performance. That gives us the edge. It's critical to performance. And the last is the athlete career, both while they're an athlete, but after an athlete, of some level of support. When you take a look at most sports, if you want to talk about international sports success, it's occurring in their mid to the late 20s. Can an athlete sustain themselves to be able to train at that level? And then when the sports career is over, are they somehow set up for their post-athletic careers? So all these variables have been identified. One, these are the things you need. Then you put them through these processes, and then the output. What is the output for your sport? Is it regional success? Is it national success? Is it growing the growth and participation of your sport? Is it growing the awareness of the sport? Is it developing a sport culture in your country? Is it winning a regional championship or winning an Olympic gold medal or a world championship? You're doing all this stuff, but ultimately, how are you measuring success? And that's the model. So as a means of conversation across sports and you learning more, maybe you guys know each other, but maybe having a conversation, and let's put it a positive spin on it. If you looked at your association, which one of these would you say is our strong suit? We think this is something that we do well, we have, and maybe give examples for how it is and why it is successful in what you're doing. Because, we can turn it around and say, well, which one, if I had a blank check, because there's 2 ways we can look at it, is what do you need? And that is when I often say, I'll give you a blank check. Which one would you put it towards? You can't put them towards them all, but which one is most important, you think? And remember, what are you trying to accomplish? How are you measuring success? But I'm going to make it a positive and say, which one we're doing really well right now? we got a great talent development plan, and we got a talent identification system in place. We have outstanding facilities. We have a coach education program that's accessible, and we're training coaches at every level. Which one is it? So let's take about a 7-minute conversation, share at your table, and say, looking at our sport right now, maybe I'll even say we're really proud of this pillar here. We really think this pillar is one of our strengths in what we're doing. Okay? Trip over that. Okay, give you about 2 minutes. About 2 minutes to wrap her up. Okay, let's start sharing. Let's start sharing amongst our tables. So we'll start on this side. We started on that side last time, but was there a consensus at your table of one, or were there multiple ones that were said to be a strength?
We have like different sports achieved these pillars. Some has achieved some small percentage, and others like. I think the first pillar is the most important, the financial support. So most of us lack these pillars, financial support.
So you have all the money you need.
No. We don't have.
Okay, so I was asking of which one do you say that, hey, we're good, we're comfortable there. So all these guys have plenty of money. Did the Ministry of Sport hear that one?
No. So the parts we are good already. I think pillar 3 and 4, most of the associations, I think they have a good development program, the fundamentals.
So pillar 3 that you feel a good job of bringing in youth into your sport.
Yeah, I mean, not us, the bodyboarding, we are in development stage of program, but I think like basket they have, and handball also.
So you have good foundation that you have a good number of kids coming into the sport at the youngest ages and attracting them. Okay, that's a strength. Because again, some sports are, maybe they view that as one of their weaknesses, that we have trouble getting kids interested in our sport versus, hey, I want to play team handball or I want to play basketball. So that again, you've got that going for you. That's a good thing to have, by the way. Good thing to have. Okay. All right. What about this table?
Financial support is never going to be enough for anyone. But organizational structure is in place for a lot of associations here. And in my sports, I have, in basketball, we have the foundation participation. Pillar 3, Pillar 4, we already have that system in place. Pillar 7, we have that. And Pillar 8, we have. 9 and 6, we don't have.
So 9 and 6 are the ones that you would like to see develop, but the other ones you're feeling pretty good about.
Yeah. And Pillar 5.
And Pillar 5.
Yeah.
Support. Okay, so you feel pretty good looking at what you have. Yes. And again, the research, the scientific research, and then the facilities. Yes. Again, facilities is a big lift. That's expensive. When you start talking about new facilities per se.
So it's actually the idea was as a direct, when we first met in 2022 with the Sports Council, headed by Mr. Nahid. At that time, once we met them, we knew, okay, we need to develop certain things in place. It was post-COVID. So we started with mini festival with the kids from ages 5 to 10, so that right now we have seen a lot of new players getting interested in the system. But we have challenges from our handball, netball. We have challenges from these sports as well.
Yeah.
But we have put in things in place where actually to attract more kids to play basketball. We have new systems in place.
Great.
So that we could actually keep them for a long time in our sport.
Very good.
So that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. So you've got multiple pillars you're kind of proud of. It's kind of interesting with foundation and participation. I'll share a quick story with you that I was working with the NBA, and we were at the very beginning of development of basketball in India. And the first time that the National Basketball Association went to India, they went to a gym or a court, and there were no baskets. In America, every gym has baskets. They just assumed that every gym everywhere in the world would have a basket at each end of the court. And when we went in there, we got very involved with looking about developing the foundational aspect of it. And I remember I talked to an Indian coach who said, our biggest challenge is that we get cricket rejects at 14. And everybody, I guess, knows that cricket in India is their sport. And they said, well, getting a 14-year-old that's not good enough in another sport to be your foundation and wanting to be good in basketball isn't going to hack it. And so it became the foundation piece was critical of getting more younger kids introduced to the game and getting them started earlier was going to be the key to them growing the game within that country. And that's probably almost 12 years ago that we were doing that work. And my sense is Indian basketball has come a long way in 12 years. So again, that foundation and participation is pretty critical. Okay? Anyone else at the table want to share? Or we decided one? Yeah.
Most of the things are the same when it comes to Kerala also. Pillar 3, since last year, we are doing very good. We have our academies are growing day by day. So the foundation and participation is going very well. And pillar 5, pillar 6, and pillar 9, we need some work to do on those.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's same as basketball also.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. This table here, you pass the mic over. So we'll just have maybe have one or two from each table that could share, that be willing to share. And we'll make sure we come back to you guys. Okay. Sorry, I think we skipped you.
Hi. This table, pillar 8, seems to be interesting because they're running.
And what sport are you, sir?
I'm from cricket.
Cricket. Okay.
There are more other sports here, but they have the national competitions going very well. I think for cricket, it's the international programs that is going well. Thank you.
Okay. And any other sport want to speak?
For us, I think pillar 3 is where we kind of flourish because swimming is a basic sport that is a fundamental sport that we do in all schools as well. So we get a lot of swimmers from the national swim program and also from inter-school swimming competitions as well. So I think that's the only area that we kind of is proud of.
Okay. Steve's expertise in the sport he came from was swimming, and I heard one of your swimming colleagues say this once, and again, it's kind of foundational that in the United States, almost every kid learns to swim, and not a competition, but to survive. And it's water safety. And it's funny, it was Mike Unger who said it to me, that he said, if you didn't learn how to play basketball, that's a shame, but if you don't learn how to swim, you could die. And last time, you guys have a lot of water around here, don't you? So swimming is a pretty critical life skill.
Unfortunately, we don't have a national learn to swim program, but since 2022, we have started a program. We started from north, and we are now down to noon at all, just like in mid region. So I think we will be able to cover all of the islands within 4 years, and then start all again. So
very good, very good. All right, great. This table over here. Do you guys have a mic?
Yeah. From tennis, their strength is the financial support, and for Bike Maldives, their strength is the foundation and participation. And for cricket, I would say training facilities, indoor cricket hall available for most of the hours of the day is the strength. And for badminton, pillar 2 and 3, organization and structure of sport policies and foundation participation. And for Paralympic also, the pillar 2 and 3 are the strengths.
2 and 3 are the strengths for para?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good. So 2 is the 3. Okay, great. Ready? And then we'll go to the back table back there.
Yeah, good evening. We all agreed that administrative and policy-wise, we all are good for now. And regarding the training facility, except for shooting, all other associations, they said we are okay with it. Foundation and participation is also good. In terms of in billiard pool, foundation, we are in the process, and I would like to say that recently I went to a tournament conducted by Basketball Association, and then I found it very interesting because they have given the power to all the academies. So the academies come up with the teams, and within the teams they have the competition. The association runs the tournament. So we are trying to implement that. I think for us, we believe it's a very good process. We giving the power and authority to the academies, and once they run with our guidance, we'll have a tournament or something like that.
And your sport again is?
Maldives Pole Billiard Association. Pole Billiard.
Oh, both. Okay.
Yeah. And all other pillars are affected by finance. So pillar 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. So that's it.
Okay. Very good. Does anyone else at the table want to share their strength? Okay, great. So again, this idea of I think it's always good to be self-reflective, looking where we are, and again, hearing that some of the sports that are a part of the community are facing some of the same challenges or the same weakness, but also, you have commonalities in what you're doing well in that sense. Okay. Now, we brought up a minute ago about the idea of doing something regionally. That if there was a model that would be put forth in doing things regionally, what would it look like? And think about your sport, and again, be sharing at your table with those of other sports. So I said, what would it look like? How many regions would the country be divided up into? And from there, in those regions, how many associations or type of associations would be in that region? Now, that idea of regionalizing it, if you think about it, most sports, especially when you talk internationally, if you look at the International Olympic Committee, there's an IOC, but there are multiple zones from Africa, Asia, Americas, Oceania, Europe, that they're regionalized. And then even within those regions, then they're broken down to even sub-regions of that. And so the idea of, and in the United States, our model of most all of our sports is that, we have a very large landmass. And so we do have a national event and national organizations, but most of our competitions are done and most of our work is done at a regional level. So the idea of regionalization, is something that is practiced. And you could argue it's, there's benefits of efficiency, and I understand that there's some challenges with it, but just the concept. So just to try to have a conversation and be thinking to yourself, well, gee, if we went into zones, how would the country be divided up? How many? Is it 6, 7, 8, 3, 2? I mean, what would it potentially look like? And then in those zones of those regions, what would be the sub-aspects of it, of sport types of organizations in those regions? So think to yourself about your sport and then share at your table to hear how others are thinking about what it might look like if it became this idea of the regional sport hubs, if that was something that would be put into practice. Okay, so if everybody have it, so you should have a number. We think it should be 4 regions, 6 or whatever that number is, and then of the sub-regions, what type of sport entities would be a part of that, of that zone. Okay? So give it a shot.
නේද ඒක අරන් හිමනේ විවාහක දෙක්කදාන කෙනෙක් එක කොම්මේ ඇසෝසියේෂන් එකේ ඉන්න දෙත අසස්සිතා වැඩස්ටි මිහාර විදිය ලව් කරන කියා මිහාර ක්‍රිකට් උදේ මේ කදා we talking about something like epic के वास्ते तो
So what is the idea?
But that also depends. For example, football is divided into 9 zones now. Yeah. 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 9 zones. Yeah.
Okay, going to give you about 3 minutes, and then we're just going to do the number one first. Like how many regions? And then we'll go back to the other one, and then talk about how many organizations will be involved.
I know one of your islands.
Most of the people in Ragadwa, it depends on the popularity and the population itself. Do we have enough to cater for that particular? That is true, but for football or futsal, it's quite different, right?
Okay. So to get an idea of a region, I'm going to put a number up. I'm going to say a number, and with that number, if that was the number you said, just raise your hand. And Steve's going to kind of keep track. Okay? So I'm going to start. The first number of zones. Who had number 10? 9. Okay, 9? Okay, got 9 regions. Okay. 8. 7. 6. We got 6 zones. Got a handful there. 5. We got 6, 1, 2. Got 2, 5. 4. Maybe I shouldn't say this now, but I'm going to 1's not an option. So okay, we're at 5. 4. 3. 2? 1, 2. All right. So it looked like 3. Was it 3 and 4? 3 done. And now, would I say that those zones were geographic? Geography drove those zones? Okay. All right. Now, within the zones, how many? Steve, how would I want to say this? I think we were talking in terms of the types of sport organizations. So the types of sports organizations that would be a part and aligned in that zone for you. So what are the different types of sport entities or sports-related entities that you may want to have as a part of a zone and contributing, whether it be athletes, programs, competitions, whatever it might be? What are some of the types of entities that already may exist? And each region has minimum of 2 subzones. 2 subzones in each 3 regions. Okay. Each region. So you have 2 subzones within the regions. So we're going to keep it within the region. Okay.
I do have a small issue on this. If with the sports interest, if we try to divide again ourselves into zones, we also must have a look on the national interest of the country, where how the government is looking into the regions. That also matters when we want to go down for the development, because Ministry of Education plays a major role when we want to do the real development. So is it all about having events, or it's also about doing the development along together? So with the experience that we had gone through during the last 10 years, I should say, from 2008 to 2018.
And your sport is?
Badminton, by the way. Okay. I'm sorry, badminton. My name is Musa.
Okay, Musa.
We had huge challenges to go through. If we had to go apart from the education system that we have in Maldives, we have a lot of limitations. So it was mandatory that we had to follow the guidelines and assistance from the Ministry of Education. Although we are in a different aspect of developing sports, because we have to be very closely working with the Ministry of Education. So we had those, in order to minimize those challenges, we were getting a lot of support from education if we wanted to get into those regions. So that would be a small kind of a thing that we had to go through during that time. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Someone from this table? Thoughts of what this again, you kept it geographic. Okay, so let's go with that theme, okay, that if you had your number of zones, how would you break that down within those zones then? How many below there? And your sport? Table tennis, okay. in each one. Okay? How many does that sound like a reasonable idea? A reasonable idea. Then what's an option to the three? The three subzones, or 3 zones and 2. What's the opposition based upon? If somebody doesn't see that, 3 and 2, that doesn't work for us. Why wouldn't it work? In your sport? Football, okay.
I think if you look into the sort of sports-wise, if you're talking about it, I think it has to be more or less the popularity of the sports, population who would like to undertake that particular sports. So I think dividing into, say, 3, 4, 6, that will depend on the popularity itself. So we cannot just say right across the board, carom, badminton, football, we can divide the zones into maybe 5 or 6. But this truly depends on the geographic location and the popularity and the population who are involved actively in participating in particular. For example, football and futsal is also different.
Yeah.
The popularity of futsal is gaining, whereas the popularity of football is, I would say, it's sort of maintained, but it's not that popularity is not gaining that momentum. But we have to be very mindful of these things. And I have to agree with Musa on the involvement of Ministry of Education. Like if we're talking about the youth development programs, we have to look into their activity calendar, what dates are available, when they are available, and those things. So we have to look into this very carefully, working very closely with the Ministry of Education. Thank you.
So, thank you. And your first name? Shibas. Who agrees with Shibas that it depends on the sport, and like you had said, popularity, that you could say that there should be autonomy for the sport to decide the zones, how many zones they would have. Okay? And again, that idea would be based on popularity, and maybe if there's more populace in one area than another area, but there would be autonomy of trying to identify that, what that zones would look like. Okay. Interesting there. Okay, yeah.
On top of that, I too agree with the idea which Shiba has proposed. Apart from that, I also have a method that if it is we are seriously thinking about going into the regions, we also must look into the national proposal, the structure that is in place. That will give us a lot of benefits and privileges if we are really going to go into the regions. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in on thoughts on their regions? Who was at the high end? Well, soccer, I know you had a lot of regions. You had up there, but who were the 5s? People had 5. I think we had a couple 5s. Who was 6? Was there? And your sport? Badminton. So you were looking at 6. Okay. Yeah. Badminton. Okay, 6. Who was that? And well, we did the 3. Was there anybody that wasn't 3? Wasn't 6? Well, but did everybody use geography? That was kind of agreed upon. It was geographical, but also factoring in geography as well as popularity. Okay. All right, one more exercise for you guys to be thinking about. There is an athlete that has demonstrated, whether it be the abilities or has demonstrated a unique talent that you feel that would make them the potential of being an elite athlete. What is the current infrastructure that's in place within your sport that will enable that athlete to achieve that full potential? And I can put back up there the diagram of those ideals, and again, think about it that maybe I could throw it in there that this elite athlete isn't from Mali. That maybe it's one of the one of the farther off areas of the country, further north, further south, but not in the central area. But what is the infrastructure? What would it look like to have that you've identified someone? And I know Steve was in swimming, and I'll use an example from America. But I heard the story from a gentleman, Bob Bowman, was the coach of Michael Phelps, who's maybe our greatest Olympian as far as sport. And Bob Bowman saw Michael at 10, 11. And just said, that's special. They said if Dr. Frankenstein was going to build a swimmer, he would have built Michael Phelps' body. But how did Michael Phelps end up becoming Michael Phelps? Because a lot of times we got a lot of stories in America about athletes that didn't achieve their true potential. So think in terms of that. You think about it in your sport and what it means to be elite in that sport. You've identified a young athlete you think may be that person. What does it look like? What is being done? What are you currently doing that's going to enable that athlete to become that athlete? In team sports, it's interesting. You always talk about the golden generation. You know, in Barcelona in Spain, you know, had that great success there for a while. They talked about there was a golden generation, you know, of athletes. We had a couple golden generations for us, like in women's soccer in the U.S., and a golden generation around like Michael Jordan's generation in basketball, you know, for us in America. But how do you? What is it that you have in place that enable those athletes to achieve that? So think for a second, and then share amongst sports of, you know, this is what we would do. This is what we could do. These are the resources available to make that happen. Okay? And we'll give you several minutes to talk, and then we'll do some sharing. Okay?
We have living examples now. For example, if you take a look at athletes, you see a few guys, you know, in terms of performance, national level, international. So it means you have comparison with how to describe financially, chemically, the most important thing I think is talent, identification, getting opportunity, finance, individual. Opportunity, ultimate exposure, enabling environment to be exposed and to be able to perform it and get support. For example, you're talking about young people. Exposure and opportunity and exposure. Then the associated things, which is like 15, 16 or 12 years old, what do you do? You start with one, then it becomes a bunch of players. We are talking about one person. That's true. Mm-hmm.
Just one point here. I think that is becoming a league, especially in one sport.
Okay. Let's hear it. Is somebody interested in sharing, or how about this? I can't caught my cords back here. Is there somebody who would like to nominate someone from their table to share what their plan is and what they would do with this elite talent? Does anybody here an interesting model or way that they would develop that talent? So we're not developing elite talent at all. Somebody going to compliment a colleague and put them forward. I usually joke, I teach university students, and I say, well, I'll ask, like, who can give the best idea? And I said, well, nobody wants to nominate. So I said, okay, they're all bad ideas, so grading this assignment's going to be easy. You're all failed. But we got somebody that's going to nominate somebody here. So can you tell me what he said? And then you can correct him. If he's, yeah, okay, go ahead. And we have a mic here? Okay, use mine.
I think he can tell much more than that. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm from Kerala. So I was telling that our current ranking in Kerala, and now it's a worldwide sport. This year, in 2024, our World Cup, in fact, it is in America. In November, World Cup will be hosting in America. And I was saying that currently, Maldives world ranking is always on second or third. Recently, we got third. 2019, we got second. So around 30 countries are playing Kerala now in worldwide. So the reason we have elite players in Maldives, but the challenge we are facing is currently India for the past 7 or 8 years, they are number one. They are athletes. The way we train our team is different from them. They are playing, they are working life. They are going like daily 8 hours. They are going to their job, maybe Indian Oil or to their Navy or their defense force. Their job is to play Kerala 8 hours. So daily they will be playing 8 hours. But here in Maldives, our situation is our players, we work for 8 to 10 hours. Then they are coming to practice for like 2-3 hours, and they are tired. So my point is that's the barrier between us and the world champions. So if we have our players getting a job from maybe our defense force or police or bank or somewhere to play for 8 hours daily, then of course that's the barrier between us and the world champions. So if that is possible, Maldives could be a world champion from a sport like this.
So you're saying it's training?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. How important is it that, I often joke about it that I had a dream when I was a kid that I was going to play in the NBA. And don't try to sway me, but I've given up on that dream. I finally gave up on it. But as hard as I tried, believe me, I tried. I practiced. I dribbled the basketball at school every day. I did everything. And I had a lot going against me in the size that I am. My vertical jump, my lateral speed. And as all the training, when you pay the best coaches in the world, you guys can disagree with anything like that. But they had the best coaches in the world, and I don't think I would have played the NBA. So the training is great, but what aspects are you doing to make sure that the right people are getting that training? We always say United States, $1 in a minute I spend on one athlete that's not going to be elite is one that I didn't spend on one they could. And so how many are very deliberate? And remember, thinking about elite, what's elite in your mind? How many people have a criteria to be able to say that there's a height, there's a weight, there's an ability that they may have that is key to being success in the sport? And that you then can see that. Because I agree, training is going to be critical. But if it's the right person getting that training, and you would start to raise your hand, is that? I'm going to grab my hand.
Yeah, badminton, Musa. I was quite interested actually to mention to you that we had a living example at the moment. We started with the London 2012 Olympic Games. At that time, we had about nearly 2.5 years. We managed to have a very successful story by the end of by qualifying the player to 2012. And then again, we started towards 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games, which again became very successful with one of the players getting qualified for the Olympic Games as well in Tokyo. The story behind that was we had to convince their parents, the players. Of course, they had to have some limitations to their schooling. We had the support across the holistic approach through the government, of course, from the International Badminton Federation, the regional federations, of course, with the parents and some sponsors. Because we need to have the real support behind the player if you really need to get them full-time involved in sports, which we have limitations in many sports, I should say. But one of the main difficulty that we have here in Maldives at the moment, I would say, is the involvement of individual and team sports having into two different directions, where sometimes when the government look into it, it doesn't really have this kind of a separation by the support that they provide. So individual sports have the opportunity more than the team events. But again, it doesn't have to be separated, but without giving them the opportunity as well, because there are some sports which have produced huge results in the region, especially in the team games as well. But again, I would say the support and opportunity that we have in individual sports is different from the team sports. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone else want to share, or if there's somebody who wants to share that they're not going to call somebody at their table? Dennis, okay.
No, I'll share my point of view, because in terms of elite player in our sport, he normally is not limited to be inside the country. Elite sport has to travel all around the world, the same with especially individual, but also team sports as well. I can share a story because this is a story that touches me in one personal way, because as I mentioned to you, I'm from Portugal. And one of the Maldivian players was supposed to play in Portugal in one of the best clubs in Portugal, in my club. And we're talking football, mentioned the opportunity. If this player plays in Sporting Lisbon, that is the club from Cristiano Ronaldo, where Cristiano Ronaldo built, in nowadays we would have a figure of the Maldives internationally. And this is something that I think it's important. Badminton has done an amazing job, and they are putting their name in the world in terms of badminton and qualifying for us. As you can imagine, we're talking about elite players, but we divide elite players for us. We divide elite players by regions. We are not talking about world elite players. Karen, you can talk about it, but not us. So I think it's the process to reach there. And there's the other point that is exactly that. Pillar 5. US, for me, and in terms of my sport, is number 1 in the world. Why is that? Because, as you mentioned before, college, university level, it's so good. We have at this moment, in terms of Portugal, we have number 43 in the world that went to college. He was a very good player in our country, but we never seen him until he was 26 years old. He finished his lawyer degree, and as soon as he finished his lawyer degree, he entered on the ATP Tour by playing a few tournaments. So this exposure that we are talking about is, we don't have it here. So in terms of what is after, and I can give you the example because we have, at least in my sport, I had probably 6 athletes that when they went to study, they had to go outside. So it's going to be very hard in terms of athletic career after. We have one of our coaches, our national coaches, came from the sport and is a coach. But in regards to being an athlete and living from that here in the Maldives, I think maybe football has someone that could live after, we're talking about 19, 20 years old. Yeah. I don't think that other sports can live from the sport.
You know, it's interesting, that again, often, when I speak, especially in the United States, the conversation now, I made it the focus on an elite athlete. But then, okay, let's step away from elite and just say, okay, develop an athlete that could be really good. And remember going back an output. What's a realistic measure of success? And based upon your comments, is a realistic measure of success in many cases just zonal excellence or regional excellence, on an international scale? Or is it just a case to be something to be very proud of is I'm the best in Maldives. I'm the best at my sport in Maldives. And it may not meaning, or just that I get to play the sport in Maldives. But I think it's really interesting, and again, whether the conversation you hear about, we talk about the term in the United States, we always talk about playing up. So if I'm from Maldives and I want to get better, then I go to Portugal, where I'm now the 5th best player. And I just found out I'm not as good as I thought I was. But you know what? Every day I'm getting pushed. And if I'm a competitor, I'm going to get better. I know Steve, and again, individual sports, it's very evident that, hey, go swim with faster swimmers. You're going to get faster because you're going to be in practice chasing them every day. But I think that idea that, again, when we talk about talent identification, is there an opportunity? And I've learned that there's far north, there's far south. What if that talent is far north or far south? And is there a way for that person to get better every day? Is there some structure that enables that? For that athlete, is there some way that that athlete could achieve their full potential? Who knows? They may be someone that's beyond that has the ability to go beyond Maldives, but may never have the opportunity to do that. So I think that's where we were kind of going about this conversation of, as coaches, yes, we like to see excellence in our athletes. We like to see success. It's defining that success, but I often talk about in the United States, hey, maybe once or twice in your career as a coach, you're going to hit the lottery. And the lottery is that athlete. That one that just, you had nothing to do with them, but they showed up on your doorstep and you're the beneficiary of this amazing talent. And then you had their responsibility. And I remember talking to Bob Bowman, who coached Michael. That was like, he said to Michael and his family, are you committed to this? But to Bob, this was one career opportunity that I'm going to get to work with an athlete like this. And like I said, he hit the lottery. He hit the lottery in getting that athlete. Put your hand up. Or no? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think the first thing is we don't have full-time athletes, although we are talking in this manner. All of these are based on, I think, full-time professional athletes. What our talk is based on, to find an elite and to make them professional. But as a federation, I think all of us, we don't have full-time athletes. Maybe a very few might have, but all of, as Karam said, all are doing a daytime job and then coming. That is also one factor I think it will affect. And also as an association or federation, we don't see anything we can do if we find an athlete from an island. Instead, if the government can come up with a plan and guideline to support us, then the association, I think, would be able to achieve it.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Steve here.
So I'm just going to do based on that last comment, do a hand count. Is there anybody that does have full-time elite athletes in their program? Raise your hand. Okay, very few. And how many athletes full-time do you have? 4? Okay. And they're able to sustain life and pay their bills and everything by being an athlete?
Yeah, probably for now. But again, that's a big question post-athletic career. Because I saw one of the gentlemen mentioning about it. It's also about the government input that relates for their sustainability. At the moment, it's working, but their post-career is very, very important.
Yeah.
I would just like to share a bit of this into one of my experience that I have gone through. There was a football player, good friend of mine. He had to sacrifice one of his leg during the South Asian Games in Bangladesh. I'm not sure how many of local Maldivians know him by name, even if you see him. He's a pickup driver. But the thing is, what he did for his country is not being recognized. This is something very important as a country, as a nation, as a small island nation. We should recognize these athletes, elite athletes, once they finish their career, how much they have sacrificed for the country. This player who is doing pickup at the moment. I always keep in close contact with him. When I have to get some kind of a service, I always try to get him his number first and try to give him the service. Once he told me he went to a queue in a hospital. No one knew him. He had to wait in the last until his number was called. He was someone who has sacrificed his life, his whole leg for the country, but no one really recognized it. So these are things, small things we can change in order to get these players sacrifice themselves and also become elite players and increase the number by number. Because at the moment, as badminton, we have 4, but we are looking forward to find a way forward and find a formula to get more players into the system. I think the government needs to input this. The whole country needs to look into this as a matter. Thank you.
Yeah, so, are there sport heroes in the Maldives? Are there sport heroes that young kids today are looking at and saying, I want to be them? You have them, but they're just not promoted that well, so that they're a top secret. They really aren't. They're not promoted. There's no PR program, so it's a great secret. But they're out there.
I'm sure sport alone cannot do that, but we need the whole system into the support. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Going to transition a little bit on this, because one of the areas that in working with countries and helping them develop and bringing more resources to a country is the relationship that the national sport federations or national sport associations have with their international federation. And I just want, by a show of hands, how many feel that their NSA has a really good, strong working relationship with your international federation? Great. And how many of you sit on key influential committees within that international federation? Okay. Great. That's good. And then from that group, how many of you have been able to tap into the resources that the IFs have to support national programs? Okay, that's good. Excellent. All right, again, we'll probably need to circle back with the few that had their hands up, because there were less with their hands up, but yeah.
One, how many of you are in a leadership board officer position within an international federation, or serving on committees? Okay. And with that, how many of you feel that you would have an interest or the capability, or have hosted some type of international sport event here in Maldives? How many people have actually hosted? Okay. How many would, maybe, if you have hosted, number one, would you host again, or number two, be interested in an event maybe beyond the level that you hosted? No? Okay. Because again, we talk about the one thing too, in the sport development idea is, one, you have an amazing country, a beautiful country. People would love to come here, and then it becomes a question: well, can we support that, and support those events? I think that's one now. There you go. There you go.
Well, and it goes along the same lines. What Matt's saying is, by hosting a major international event within your country, those heroes that we're talking about that are these top secret commodities can be promoted within the press and at least have some bit of spotlight put on them during that period of time when you're hosting that event, because that draws the media attention. It's one of those things where it's an opportunity to promote them. I still believe, and it's a program that we implemented while I was at the USOC, and it's called Managing Victory. And what we actually do is we have a program and we train our athletes that when they finally do attain a level of success within a competition, what's going to happen next, how they need to be prepared to handle the media, how they need to be prepared to go out and maximize their potential in their own personal sponsorships. And that was a program that we ran, the Olympic Committee ran for all of the national sport federations and their athletes, because we could do that. To ask each one of the federations to do it themselves was difficult, but we could provide the resources, pay for those resources to do that training that helped those athletes be prepared that the day that they do have that success, they were ready for it. And it wasn't like a deer in the headlights that's coming at them and then they don't know what to do next. They freeze, and that 15 minutes of fame, most of it gets wasted because they weren't prepared. So it's an excellent point that as we start to look at this and talk to the ministry about how they can help NSAs and their athletes, that's a program that I think could help as well. So, all right, I think Matt's going to transition now into
one last conversation point here as we're starting to come to a close here. And you guys have been great, by the way. This has been fun listening and hearing. And I'll tell you the one thing I'll kind of add on to what Steve said about America. I think it's a shame that, like you said, for every Michael Phelps and Michael Jordan who's made millions of dollars off of becoming heroes, we have many athletes that are in our high-profile sports that face the same challenge. You know, I want to try to go to one more Olympic Games, but I have no money. I have to support a family. You know, so that challenge is a universal challenge. And like I said, in the United States, it's easy for us to point to the athletes that are millionaires and all those things, but they're the minority. There's a lot of athletes out there just doing it for the love of the sport and not getting the credit they probably do or the support they probably should get. So we looked at these pillars, and I wanted to break one more out and have a conversation about this concept, and it's the athlete development. And we talked a little bit about talent ID, but this idea of the pipeline to create an elite athlete. How many people have heard the term LTAD, long-term athlete development? You know, I'm going to say I was exposed to it probably, I'm going on almost 15 years ago, when it was an idea that came out of Eastern Europe of saying that there's a logical progression of how you develop an athlete. And that, again, it may not be, exactly that progression, but it gives you a framework to start saying about what the expectations are in athletes at certain stages, how do we coach them in certain stages, how do we design our training and coaching. And again, you guys talk about sports science, and we talk about what is the appropriate training load and recovery for a 6-year-old versus an 8-year-old versus a 12-year-old versus an 18-year-old. And I know we do this in America. Well, geez, the way I coach my 18-year-olds is how I'm going to coach my 6-year-olds. And then I'm going to use the same training program that I use with 18-year-olds with my 6-year-olds. And, in basketball, we have a terrible thing that we have, a 4'6", I don't know what that is in meters, little guy about this big shooting at the same 10-foot basket as a 6'6" NBA player. And they're learning such bad technique from down here, throwing the ball up from their hip, where maybe if we made smaller baskets that they would be doing the correct technique from a very early age. And so again, this whole idea of long-term athlete development, and I'm going to go one more slide, show you a slide that I think yeah, great. And by the way, I'll share these slides with the ministry, and feel free to share these out. But if you want to jump online and just type in LTAD and learn more for yourself if you're not aware of it. But this idea that Canada was the information that I was exposed to, and I often refer to it. But this idea that they established these stages that an athlete moves through. And that at each stage, now it's chronological age, and yes, we know there's some 8-year-olds who look like 14-year-olds and 14-year-olds who look like, 8-year-olds. But it's chronological age, and it really gets into what you do, what the coaches do, what the expectation is, what training should look like. And again, this idea of implementing a long-term athlete development plan, and not only developing it, but then implementing it. And that's the one thing I've seen over the years. Through ICCP, we've had a number of coaches come in, and as part of ICCP, you have to develop a project and go back and put it in place. And we've had a number of coaches who've taken the framework, they know their sport, they develop out curriculums, They've trained the coaches in the curriculums of what the appropriate roles of our coaches in those areas, and then these are the appropriate, age-appropriate activities you can be doing in practice and in your training, and the intensity of that training, the amount of training that you're doing, and then it's a logical progression to say that at one stage, once the athlete has maximized their ability at that stage, they move to the next one. And so imagine it's a circle this big when they finish the, let's say it's the train stage and they're moving on to the train to compete stage. They go back and it's this again. Then they move through that stage and then they max out. Then it's time to move on to the next stage. Think about it. Our educational system is set up like that. You go from the first grade to the second grade. We use grades in America. First grade, the second grade, the third grade. There's a logical progression. It's the same idea as far as how we develop our athletes. I often joke about it. Can you imagine how our kids would be if you took their curriculum for when they were 6 years old and then put them in a class where they were covering the materials for a 16-year-old? And then the next year, take them from there, we're talking about things that were related to a 16-year-old and put them back down for what an 8-year-old would be learning. And sometimes when there's no continuity and coaches don't know what their role is and what they should be focusing on at that developmental stage, it impacts the development of those athletes. So the question I have for you, and again going back to it, how conscious are we within our federations of having an athlete development plan? And if you wanted to develop one, how would you get it into the hands of the people that mattered? And again, this kind of leads into it that at these younger stages, active start. We had somebody from one of the community organizations in our earlier group. She was dealing with 3 and 5-year-olds. But look at the next stage. It's called fundamentals. And FUN is capitalized. That is your sport fun. And they talk about this, that this is known as the romance stage. And we fall in love with the sport. That's when it occurs. And in America, we have coaches berating 7-year-olds, punishing them. Not a kid saying, I don't want to go to practice. And then we wonder why kids are leaving our sports. They should be going, I don't end practice, coach. Mom, Dad, we're late. I don't want to be late for practice. Probably because they're going to go have fun with that. And again, are your coaches creating that environment at that stage that they fall in love with their sport? Right? They fall in love. Because you know what? When you're in love with something, you're going to put up with the expectations and the demands when you start getting into understanding, learning to train. Next stage, you want to be good, it's going to get hard. But I love it, so I'm going to put up a little bit more hard in practice. Then I'm going to learn, I'm going to train, I'm going to start training to compete. Now, competitions matter. And the fun is when I'm winning and I'm good. I have confidence. And then when you go for excel, then we have the conversation about at the highest levels. And it's a pyramid. Only a few are going to reach that level. But the great thing about this model, and this brings it back to the benefits of sport and society, is not all of us are going to get to the peak. But yet, we've developed athletes who are going to be able to be active their entire life, will stay engaged with their sport, be able to have the ability to pick up other sports. You'll talk about at the earliest stages, they talk about developing an athlete first and then making it sport specific. We make them a good athlete, they can do a lot of things, and then we put a badminton racket in their hand. And now, because they were doing other things, they can move. I guess badminton, be able, good reflexes, moving laterally, all those things. Well, they picked that up when they were playing soccer, maybe they were playing basketball, or maybe they were doing some other activities. And they were sampling and finding out what sport maybe they truly loved, and maybe that sport they really had a skill with. So our last challenge for you is, number one, if you have a long-term athlete development plan, how are you implementing it so that it's in the hands of those that, especially at those youngest stages? And we do it in the United States, and I propose this, that we have the opportunity to pay coaches in the United States. And it's usually in the United States, our weakest coaches and our most not knowledgeable coaches, we put at the youngest stage. And I say, put your most gifted that are going to connect with those young kids, and often it's a former player who's young, who can play the sport, and this kid, he may only be an average athlete, but to a 6-year-old, like, oh, he's the greatest soccer player. He's better than Messi. He can juggle the ball 10 times. It's amazing. But it's enthusiasm. And then, you know what? We pay them. I encourage pay that coach so they stay. And if they're good at coaching that age, keep them in that age group. and let them say that you contribute in keeping these kids. And one of the biggest measures I now do with American sport clubs, I talk about retention. You started the year with 50 kids. How many are coming back next year? Are 45 of them coming back? And the 5 that aren't coming back are the parents moved. It was too hard to get to. They just didn't like it. But if you're telling me we lost 25 of them, something not right here. So again, this idea critical for our development and retention of our athletes. So if you're doing it, how are you doing it? And if you wanted to do it, how are we going to implement that across our sport? And remember, you're the national association across the country. What could it be? So talk at your table a little bit, and then we'll close on that, okay? And again, I'll share these slides with you guys. I think I'll share that again.
Trying to do. I don't know what they are trying to do. Okay, fine. It's a long-term plan. I know it's a long-term plan. Okay, the first thing is the first that you are current identification in their in Maldives. At the age of 18, they are supposed to do a day job. To put food on their table. And a good shelter on their table. This is the reality.
Currently, that's a part of your association. Okay. So do you have a plan? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So again, we have a plan, but the implementation is a challenge, okay? Well, if you got an opportunity to develop a plan, what would your strategy be? And let's say that we have the funds to do that. What would it look like? Did anybody have thoughts on how they would roll that plan out?
In tennis, although like they said, we miss people, we miss qualified people. But this is something that I learned in the past, and that's the way I always worked. My 14, normally starting at 14 to 16 years old, are normally the group that I take advantage to basically work on those groups 0 to 6. They have the fundamentals. They've been working since they were 6 until they were 14, so they have at least 8 years of the sport. So, and at the maturity sometimes it's in sports, when one coach is too mature, normally doesn't have patience. And what we do is we bring these 14 to 16-year-olds. In terms of the assistant coaches that are younger, that just finished their careers, and maybe they were players and didn't succeed at 18 or 19, but have a lot of experience, we normally work on groups from 6 to 12.
Having them coach.
Having them coach. At this moment, I was just sharing on the table. I have one of my players, that is our number one. He's been for 10 years in a row, he's national champion. As a role model for all these kids, he's very good. At this moment, basically we sign up him to be the development coach. He invested as well in his career, so he just finished his level 2 in ITF. So we investing, this is one of the things that we try to do, is invest in Maldivian coaches. Why Maldivian coaches? For two main reasons. One, the representation of the nation has to be strong and has to be, as a leader, has to be the leader from the nation. This is one of the things that I always see. And I'm from another nation. I'm saying this, but I'm from another nation. In regards to all that is the main events like Davis Cup and Billie Jean Cup that are the two main team events, the coach has to be Maldivian. For example, I was present in Bahrain and I had to be outside of the court. We had 2 Maldivian captains on court. So if we basically improve all that is the coaching aspects in the country, we're always going to be able to cover with coaches all the group ages. If I think football has also an international coach for the A team. If we can bring that person, I always say, if that person has maybe more experience, maybe a different knowledge, is take all the juice from those coaches, all that we can, so we are going to be even better than them sooner or later. I think this is something that has to be, like I said, I'm saying this, but we are lacking as well in terms of people here and interest on the sport from these group ages. We shared as well on the table, I think it was a common thing that as a player or athlete at 16 years old, it's going to be very hard to maintain him and to keep in sport. Why is that? Because there's no future, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, all great points. You know, it's interesting. I had a conversation with the previous group from soccer, that whole idea of how English soccer improved when they brought the European coaches in and kind of raised them, and then non-English players came into the EPL and raised the level of play, you know, in the EPL. So there's the benefits there. But I think this idea, I know we're getting close to it tied there. When I had the pillars up there, you know, I mentioned it earlier, this athlete development was one side, and then the coach development was on the other side. And these go hand in hand because, again, if you'd like to have all your coaches thinking the same way, and I think there's some countries out there in specific sports that do a really good job of, number one, developing the plan, But I think the next step of is implementing it, getting it into the hands of those that are going to be working with the youth. And like I said, the interesting thing and this is the situation in almost every country, is that when we start talking about those early stages, they are decentralized. They are out in your different, we set up our zones. These are your clubs. These are community groups. These are volunteers that are coaching. And are they coaching the right way? And there's some great research out there that when you start talking about with athletes, and let's get into just developing good athletes, that if they start developing a motor skill that's incorrect or a skill in your sport at a younger age, once they go through puberty, physically it becomes more challenging to change that bad habit. And you know that in your sport, there are some bad habits that are, that will end your ability to compete at a higher level. In each one of your sports, you could say, hey, if an athlete does this and that's not corrected, they're never going to be, reach their full potential. And some of them, that's a habit that's ingrained that's going to be difficult to change. Now, I don't know if this joke will go over here because I'm from the United States. What do you call this here in this class? Was it? Oh, in English. What would you call it in English? No, in water? Okay. I come from Philadelphia. And we call it water. Because I've been calling it water since I was probably 3 years old, but now I'm 59. And if you ask me what's in there, I'm saying water. And guess what? Try to get me to say water. And even if you drilled and drilled to me, when push came to shove and I'm dying of thirst, and I would say, I need some water, even though you told me to say water. And isn't that the same? I remember talking to an elite coach one time. He was so frustrated. He said, I spent a day trying to work on this guy's low post step move, and he just wasn't learning it. And I'm saying, Coach, so you're going to reverse 15 years in a day? And guess what? He's never going to change that because it's embedded. And so, again, that critical stage and the importance of communicating with those coaches and those organizations that are working with our future. So if that's flawed, then you have a flawed pipeline moving your way through and the athletes that we look forward to coaching at an elite level. And so the investment from a national federation into its youth development and getting the information in the hands of those youth coaches, we benefit later on. We benefit later on. And plus, we also should recognize those coaches, that they contributed. Then when you have success, it's recognize those coaches that, yes, you were there when they got started. And that's a true implementation. And the thing I'm really proud of, we probably have, from our ICCP program, I can think of probably 6 or 7 fully implemented LTAD programs that were started by one of our graduates who went back, developed the program, worked, grew it over multiple years, that now in their sport it is what is practiced, that the coaches know what their roles are. They have drills that they know are age appropriate for what they're trying to accomplish. They know what the proper demeanor is and interaction be with their athletes, and they're seeing results. And whether it just be the sake of just being good in their sport, and in a couple of cases, yeah, they've had success with athletes going and excelling in zonal or in worlds or in Olympic games and so forth. But they developed a very good system of how they're developing their athletes, and those athletes are staying engaged with their sports and becoming active individuals for life. So I just want to close real quick. Let's see if he wants mic too. Thank you. On a Friday night that you guys came, and not only did you come, but you were engaged. And to hear the conversations. And how many people met somebody at their table tonight that they never met before? You got a new friend? We got a new friend? And remember, you guys are part of a community. We may be different sports, but sport is one unifying thing. And I've seen it firsthand. I think Steve has seen it. We have ICCP, and I'll start at the beginning, and I'll have 30 countries sitting out in front of me. And they don't know each other. They've never met. Different countries, different cultures, different nationalities, different sports. And then, man, by 2 weeks, this thing, sport, brought them all together. And they become a family. And I think what's kind of neat to see it, and I really give the credit to the ministry, the Olympic Committee, and then you guys for being here. But you guys are all a part of one big family. You each are doing your individual sports, but family share with one another. We look after one another. We communicate. We all look to get ourselves better. If I got an idea that's good for my sport, maybe it could apply to your sport. And so this is again, I consider it an honor to have an opportunity to travel across the globe, come to an amazing country. Steve kept telling me about the waters, and he all of his exaggerations still didn't match what I saw. I mean, unbelievable, the country and the beaches and the water. And but hey, I just want to say thanks for your opportunity. We both did a lot of listening, and we're really excited just to try to share what we're hearing and working with the ministry and the Olympic Committee and moving forward in this idea of a long-term athlete development plan. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best for the remainder for the weekend. And again, thank you for coming out tonight. All right, Steve, anything? Good. Oh, good. All right, guys.